Instead of suffering through the YouTube chat, click like and subscribe.
I just know that, I remember the WrestleMania documentary, which was supposed to be the same thing, and it was total fluff, and they stayed away from every controversy that they could. And but we'll see. This is more of an outsider thing. I mean, WWE's involved, but it's still outsider. So, but I still don't anything with WWE direct involvement in it. Like WWE can be affiliated. I'll give you like an example, like the Andre documentary. WWE was part of it, but they, it was really a Bill Simmons thing, and even the Vince one was the same thing. I mean, the Vince one, obviously, they had no control over the Vince one because they did not like how that one turned out at all. The Andre one, I didn't hear any complaints, nor should there have been of it. I mean, there were a few minor things, but that would be more on the side of reality, you know what I mean, as opposed to what WWE would think, even though I know that there was a lot of frustration with, Vince and Hogan because it's Vince and Hogan, and they're trying to tell us a true story, and they were interviewing Vince and Hogan, so it makes it pretty tough. But I actually have, which reminds me of something. So on the was this Vince? This was the Andre documentary, not the Vince documentary. So in the Andre documentary, and this wasn't on the documentary itself, but I remember being told that they interviewed Vince about, that whole story about, the night before this and all that, right? And Hogan had a story. And Vince
the night before this and all that, I have no idea what you're talking about.
The night before the WrestleMania match with Andre the Giant.
Okay.
Yeah, Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, Silverdome and all the... So Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon told these detailed stories, which were totally, completely contradicted each other in a manner where one of them had to be absolutely lying, and they both could have been lying. And because I was actually asked about it, like, if Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon were telling a story, and there's no way that both stories could be true because they're completely contradictory, who would you believe? And I said, Vince McMahon. And they said, well, we've checked this one out, and they're probably both inaccurate, but the Vince one is more inaccurate than the Hogan version. And it's like, well, there you go. So, but yeah, so that was... that just did remind me of that. I actually did a documentary on Hulk Hogan this afternoon for a couple hours, so it was very interesting. It will be on Fox Network in just a couple weeks, actually, and it will be a very interesting finished product. I will say that because it'll just be interesting. It really made me think that when something happens, if something ever happens to Dana, and somebody does documentaries on him, which they will, if they don't talk to the right people, well, and I don't know who those right people, I'd be one of them, but I don't know if they would come to me for an MMA one, but just how totally full of shit the end product would be as far as history goes. However, we'll see how this one does, but it's just like there is a perception, and it's like, they've successfully brainwashed a lot of people about, the idea that wrestling was never popular before, and, women never went to wrestling, and kids never went to wrestling, and families never went to wrestling before 1984. And it's just like, oh my God, when I went to wrestling for the first time when I was 11 years old, the place was swarming with kids. It was probably it was different in the sense that it was tons of kids, and it was a lot of older people. When I say older people, probably in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I remember like going to wrestling now, and the thing is like I see like none of the older people. I see kids at WWE. If I go to other shows, I don't think I see older, that older crowd at any shows. Those would be the stereotypical old boxing audience, and those were the people in the front rows. They'd been going to wrestling for 20, 30 years, earned their season tickets because, you would have to you got, the front rows at the buildings that ran regularly. You got your season tickets. You got the best seats were by seniority. Somebody had to die before you could get into the front row. So the front row was like all the older people that would always talk to me about Luthez and these guys. When I was a kid, these guys aren't real, but man, you should have seen like Luthez and Leo Nomalini, and it was just like, which was essentially the exact same thing now. And that's why I always say, like, every generation, it's exactly the same, and I've seen stuff from people who researched the 1930s, and, it was the same, like I saw like articles about, who's in the front row when it's older people and in the front row, and they're going, this stuff's all fake. But man, should have seen Stecker. You know what I mean? And that's just the history of wrestling. It's like when you're a kid, it's all real. And when you're an adult, it's not real. And no one's as good as the people that you grew up on and all that. But man, like the myths of that Vince and these guys have created about wrestling, it's unbelievable. It like blew my mind. Some of the questions that I was being asked just blew my mind, and it's just like but for UFC it'll be the same, unless they get some people who were around when it really was around, because man, they have a lot of myths too, about what they did and everything like that. So that's what was reminding me of. It's like, man, it's like in MMA we got the Zuffa myth stuff, which all the reporters, the Zuffa myth. It's like, man, pro wrestling, it's all myth. It's like the whole history is a freaking myth to everyone on the outside, that didn't actually study the history.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and click that notify button, and you'll never miss a video again.